Hello, and welcome to 20 Years with Maestro Conlon, a behind-the-curtain mini-series with the incomparable James Conlon, who recently launched his 20th and final season as Richard Seaver Music Director of LA Opera. I'm Gail Eichenthal, and Maestro, a joy to have you with us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Before we go on to a look at the classical repertoire that you've done here and will be doing here, bravo on the season opener, West Side Story, unforgettable production.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. I think most people did a lot, yeah.
This is the one piece that probably everyone in the audience knows almost every word of. I wonder, did you kind of grow up with West Side Story?
I actually completely absorbed it by osmosis before I had even had a piano lesson, thanks to a vinyl. Now, my own copy disappeared in recent times, unfortunately, but so I got another one online. But this is what it looked like. I think my mother or my aunt brought it home. We wore it through by playing it, replaying it before I had even started my piano lessons. So I completely absorbed it at the time, and it's been in there ever since.
So you didn't have to work that hard to know this score.
I didn't. It's just astonishing what you learn at that age, you retain.
Incredibly, West Side Story, I believe, was the 50th opera that you've conducted here in 20 years. I'm curious, did you have any idea when you took this post that you'd spend 20 years of your life with LA Opera?
No, when I came to LA Opera, I thought, Placido thought, we figured, he said, even if you stay 3 or 4 years, it would be great for the company. So I never envisioned this. And so at 20 years, I am very surprised as I look back now with the satisfaction that I do of having had this experience, which I did not expect to have.
I remember how we all, LA Opera fans, felt so thrilled to hear that you were coming to LA to do this. How did the company woo you?
Well, there wasn't much wooing. I mean, Placido called me up one day and he said, we want to find a new music director and you're our first choice, and would you consider this? And I remember saying to him, look, I just got rid of 2 enormous jobs, one which was in Paris and one which was in Cologne, Germany, which was not just the opera house, but also the orchestra. I said I was looking forward to goofing off, by which I meant, working 10 months a year. I wasn't about to stop. But he said, I think it would be great. And it was thoroughly his idea. I hadn't even thought about it. I had very little history in California at all. I mean, I'd come a few times to the Bowl to conduct, a few times to the San Francisco Symphony, but that was my entire Californian experience. So it's not something I envisioned. I didn't apply for the job. I mean, he came to me and he asked me, well, what would you want? And I said, well, if I came, I would want to be able to turn it into an opera house capable of doing Wagner, because I had just come off a very heavy, I would say 15 years of having been a music director in Germany where you do it all the time. And also in Paris, we did a lot of the Wagner operas. So I was, of course, addicted at the time. And I said I would want to continue that. And he said, well, that's no problem. We're planning to do the first Ring, which has never been produced by a company in Los Angeles. And then I told him about a mission I had, which didn't even have a name at the time, which was to revive and bring to the public's attention as much music by composers who were suppressed by the Nazi regime, either murdered, forced to immigrate, but certainly banned and silenced, of which there are many operas. And he said, well, I don't know much about that, but if you think they're good and we should do it, we should do it. And so we started.
Yeah, and those were glorious discoveries for all of us, Recovered Voices program. Before we look back at highlights of your 20 years in Los Angeles, conducting a bounty of music of the classical era, I'd like to zero in on that word classical. It seems to have a very broad general meaning in music. We refer to listening to a Green Umbrella concert by the LA Phil, contemporary classical music. Should we use another word? Is it overused?
No, I don't think it's overused. It has various meanings. I mean, first, there is classical with a small c, which refers to anything that is written in a certain tradition or with an awareness of a tradition. Even if it's new music, even if it's innovated, there is a consciousness that it belongs to a long line that goes back hundreds of years. There's classical with a capital C, which specifically refers to the period of Haydn, Mozart, Beethoven. And so we'll be talking a little bit about that today. But I think also there's a general definition, imperfect as it is. Well, how do you get to be a classic? I mean, T.S. Eliot wrote a wonderful essay, What is a Classic? And somehow or other we agree that a classic has survived the time and place in which it was written and seems to find renewed applicability and relevance over and over again because of maybe qualities we can't even necessarily identify, but we recognize that it is so. We go back to those works because, and this is of course also for literature and for dance, for theater, for poetry. So it belongs to those things that belong to our long tradition and form a line with it.
So we're going to zero in on three great classical composers of the era, Mozart, Beethoven, and a composer who had an influence on this era. You showcased his amazing work a couple of years ago, Christoph Willibald Gluck. So he predated Mozart and Beethoven, and you had this incredible 2018 production of, I guess the French version is Orphée et Eurydice. Is that correct? There's many ways to pronounce it.
Right, and there are many versions of the opera, yeah.
So this was the John Neumeier version with dance being incredibly important. What are your memories of that really indelible production?
I love Gluck, and unfortunately, I haven't done as much as I would like to. I have never done some of the other operas. But Orpheus has always been, I call it Orpheus, but has always been a favorite of mine from the time I was a teenager. Done it in Italian, Orfeo, done it in French, and in a certain way, and you could do it in German because he kept revising it. Its great influence was his thinking about opera as a dramatic entity, where he was ahead of his time in saying, no, it's not just a string of arias and string of songs for singers to show off their virtuosity. It has to have dramatic coherence. And as such, without his knowing it, of course, there was a welcoming future to that viewpoint. And certainly Mozart is going to inherit that and going to make extraordinary revolutionary steps in that direction. But then the whole 19th century was ready for that. Wagner was ready for it. Certain Italians, like Verdi in particular, were ready for it. So Gluck's influence was sort of outsized compared to the actual number of operas that we do. But we don't do them enough, and I wish we did.
Yeah, the opera first premiered in Vienna in 1762. Mozart was 6, but he became aware of the work obviously later in life, and so there were further productions.
Well, it continued to be. I mean, and first of all, it was originally written for Florence, redone in France. It was redone in Vienna, and each time it changed the title role. I mean, it was a mezzo-soprano who became a castrato, became what we would now call a countertenor. I mean, it went through many, many, many changes. And Gluck also demonstrated his flexibility and his willingness to recast the vocal demands, but he always kept one thing in common, and that was the dramatic importance, the dramatic line.
The opening of your second season in 2007-2008 certainly began with a very dramatic piece, Beethoven's only full-fledged opera, Fidelio, a stunning production with an incredible cast. And this is a female soloist who plays a man.
Or plays a female who dresses as a man in order to rescue her husband, who is a political prisoner in the dungeon of a castle.
And I still remember the dungeon of that castle The use of projections by LA Opera, this is now, as we say, 2007, was mind-blowing and really gave us a sense of kind of claustrophobia of that prison. That seemed to be an early use of projections.
I remember them. I remember peering into this, seemed to be vortex. I remember the extraordinary performances of Klaus Florian Vogt, and most of all, Anja Kampe as Fidelio or Leonora, Matti Salminen as Rocco. It was a superb cast. And to conduct Fidelio is just one more great part of conducting all of Beethoven. That's to say, all of the symphonies, all of the piano concerti, to be able to be a part of this great collection of works. But it is his only opera.
Why do you think he wrote only one?
He wrote only one opera, I think, because he had so much trouble writing it. It took him on and off for 20 years. He kept revising, he kept throwing out, he kept starting again. He had a lot of trouble with the form. Now, there are composers who wrote no operas. Brahms, Bruckner, Mahler, surprisingly enough, who conducted so many operas. And then there are composers who virtually only wrote operas. Puccini, Verdi, with the great exception of the Requiem. So it depends very much on the sensibility and the environment in which the composer was working. Beethoven wanted to make that opera. It seemed to be terribly important to him to succeed, but it didn't seem to come as naturally to him as other things did. And so I think he suffered over it. Several versions, the original one's being called Leonora, until he felt he got it right. But it's interesting how much modern scholarship, not that we supposed scholars and musicologists know that much, but there's still a lot of criticism. It's not a perfect opera. It has its problems. What's wrong with it? What makes it work? First of all, I think it's one of the greatest pieces of music ever written. Is it dramatically convincing? Absolutely. I remember it as a great moment in my early years at Los Angeles Opera.
We remember it that way too. And actually, for me, one of the most memorable parts of your performance was purely instrumental, and that is the insertion of the Leonora Overture No. 3, a great symphonic work that wasn't actually originally intended to be in that place in that opera, right? Wasn't it originally intended as an overture?
Well, that's right. This is a practice. I believe that Gustav Mahler introduced that practice, and it's been argued ever since. There are those who say absolutely not, others who say absolutely do it. Now, it has two advantages. One is the audience gets to experience a very great work that is a resume and a summing up of the entire story of Fidelio. There were 3 Leonore overtures. This is the greatest of the 3. And there are those who say, well, it overwhelms what comes afterwards. On the other hand, in the old days, you were stuck with a very embarrassing pause because the scenery had to be changed. So now that's not true any longer in modern day times. I still think that there's a great value to doing it. I would not be dogmatic about doing it or not doing it. The great German conductor Otto Klemperer argued passionately for it and passionately against it at varying times in his life. It is an option. I happen to like it. I think people who love Beethoven, and mostly those are people that are going to come to Fidelio, appreciate its presence.
Yeah, I can imagine where there'd be a concern that it might overpower the opera, and I'm thinking of the Meditation in Thais, which is so utterly sublime, purely orchestral, and everyone's kind of waiting for it amidst the opera.
Well, as long as they don't walk out after it's done.
Well, the 40th anniversary season of LA Opera, your 20th season concludes with a grand finale, the sublime Magic Flute by Mozart. We touched on it in our last conversation, but I'd like to do a little bit more of a deep dive here. It's coming May 30th, concludes June 21st. It is not to be missed. And let's hear about this production, which is so special, so different
The production of The Magic Flute by Barry KUSC has gone around the world. I believe it is the most modern production that had seen more spectators than any other. It was a radical idea to use silent film as a way to present the story. It's endlessly ingenious. Our audiences have loved it. I think this is our fourth outing with it now, probably mine as well, here in Los Angeles. It's a work, of course, it doesn't need introduction. It doesn't need advocacy. It is rightfully very popular and rightfully very well loved. I chose for the end of my time here in LA Opera, the final work of Mozart, the final work of Verdi, to mark this occasion. And so it is the last opera. He completed it at the end of September 1791. He, of course, died in December of 1791, and it is his last opera.
Coming close to being his last opera was La Clemenza di Tito, which you also did here so memorably. Was he actually working on both operas at the same time? Because it premiered a few weeks before Flute.
Yeah, the distance between September the 6th and September 30th divides them. He wanted this commission in Prague. Very important to him. It was prestigious. He was ill. Constanze, his wife, didn't want him to travel to Prague. He insisted on doing it. And, of course, the whole time, the Magic Flute, which was completely different. The Clemenza di Tito is a so-called opera seria, which were the serious operas written throughout the 18th century and had certain formula which he had to respect and did respect, usually based on classical mythology or classical history, Tito being, a prominent and important emperor of Rome, and that he could conceive this at the same time that one of his most imaginative creations, the Magic Flute, which was purposefully popular, and where he mixed popular music or his reading on popular music together with classical music, put it all together with Emanuel Schikaneder in a comic setting, but it's still time very philosophic. It is clearly a work that was based on the principles of the Freemasons. He was a member of a Masonic lodge, and he put it all together almost as a educational project as well as an amusement. And he mixed all of that together. And while he was conceiving it, he was writing Clemenza di Tito, which is, of course, we have no way to understand the extraordinary complexity of Mozart's creative process. He left no evidence, really. He seemed to work out most of it in his head. How astonishing.
He died in his 30s and created, some 600 works, great symphonies, piano concertos, string quartets, on and on, string quintets, songs. And here he was at the end of his short life working on two glorious operas. It is, as you say, pretty much inconceivable. Do you still hear new things? I know you've conducted these works a lot.
I think that I go back to Mozart over and over again out of an inner need of mine, but also because it is constantly renewing. Now, I've conducted well over 200 performances of Mozart operas. Count all the symphonies and concertos, 500. I don't even know. I don't even count. I could try. But, and I've spent my entire life doing that. And I will go back to them. And I've got things planned already after I leave LA Opera. So I think for me, he's amongst the most perfect of composers and one whom I find spiritually so important for me, but I think for so many other people. I always have the impression that I feel better physically as well as internally for having conducted a performance or having even just heard a performance. It comes back to me constantly as an experience, and I think it's something that Mozart seemed to understand something about the inner harmony of the universe in a way that goes beyond just writing notes, that somehow he puts us in contact with a balanced and a cosmic equilibrium that we all need. And so I go back happily over and over and over again to these works.
It's all there in Magic Flute. And for those who haven't experienced it, it's really a must. And as profound as it is, as you alluded to, it's so easy to love. It's funny, it's silly, it attracts children. It is the perfect opera, I think, to see an opera for the first time. And then this production, of course, with its animation is so special. And there's so much emotion in this opera. That's what's sort of surprising. There are a few moments in music where I cry every single time. And one of them is the beginning of the duet of Papagena and Papageno toward the end of the opera. I don't even know why I cry, but there's something so touching about these kind of buffoonish characters coming together.
The genius of Mozart can also be measured in the fact that anybody, even a child, and there have been studies about this, can respond to the music of Mozart at a first hearing without any prior knowledge, without any supposed sophistication, and at the same time, experienced concert goers, experienced opera goers, experienced musicians can go back to these works, as I have, over and over and over again, over a lifetime, and still find significance and beauty and inspiration on the 100th hearing. So that's a unique, that cannot be said of all composers.
Is he a bit of an acquired taste? I mean, you said he appeals to children, and Mozart, it's been shown, can kind of affect their brains. But I hear people in their 20s or 30s say, oh, I'm more of a Tchaikovsky, Wagner person. Are they then likely to come to Mozart?
I cannot actually even conceive of not loving Mozart. So for me, it is so normal, so natural, so just harmonious with our nature to love Mozart. I don't understand it. But taste is taste. And by the way, Tchaikovsky had a favorite composer, and his favorite composer was Mozart.
Excellent point. So this production by Barry Kosky, which was in partnership with the British Theatre Company in 1927, and that gives you a sense of sort of the milieu of it, as you said, the sort of silent movies. It was, even from its first year here at LA Opera, a spectacular success. Were you surprised at how quickly audiences came to this unusual hybrid of film and live opera?
Well, I wasn't surprised because I had gone to Berlin to see it, and I was completely charmed and taken with it. The use of silent film and no speaking, no dialogues, and to be able to make that so charming, so narrative that if that you can use that word in that case. No, I was not surprised, and I'm still not surprised. And people come back over and over and over again to see it.
You're syncing up musically with the animation. Does that present, or did it present when you first conducted it, special challenges, or special challenges perhaps for the orchestra?
Well, it was much talked about at the time. It didn't really. And by the way, I was not that constrained. I mean, there were certain things you had to line up, but it wasn't as if you were working to a click track or something, or trying to make a movie score line up with imagery. Yes, there are some things that have to line up, but it also leaves space for your own particular choices for tempo are concerned, or the singer's needs for breaths, and so a little bit, but not a lot.
Okay. And now you have many orchestra players who have been with you for decades, actually. So I would imagine it's almost old hat to them now.
Well, not old hat in a bad way. I think everybody loves playing the Magic Flute. For sure.
And everybody has to come and see it, especially if you haven't experienced it before. May 30th is the opening of the grand finale of James Conlon's final season as Richard Seaver music director. I bet this has been asked of you many times, and maybe it's annoying, but I wonder if you have favorite operas, sort of a pantheon, and if you do, does that change over time? Does it depend on what you're conducting at the time?
Well, my standard answer is no, I don't. I have 50 favorites. And so it's impossible to say. Even if you ask me my favorite composers, I can't tell you. Is it Mozart? Is it Verdi? Is it Beethoven? Is it Wagner? Is it Debussy? Is it Stravinsky? It's very hard to answer that because, in fact, when you are experiencing a piece of music, you cannot simultaneously experience another piece of music. In other words, is there a competition while you're listening to, let's say, the Magic Flute? Are you competing with your own love for Verdi's Falstaff or for Wagner's Ring? And I say, no, you cannot possibly, because you are experiencing the universe. The universe is that work at that moment. If then when you're, seated and contemplating and say, okay, tell us now, which one is it? It's hard to tell. Because the same reason you can't pick out your favorite child or you can't pick out your favorite friend. We love so many people, or we're capable of loving so many people. Do you say, well, you love that one, so you can't love this one? It doesn't work that way. It's an infinite, love is infinite. Spiritual goods, spiritual values are infinite. They are not limited the way material goods are. And it's the same with music. You are capable of loving so much that you don't really have to choose. Unfortunately, we don't choose. You can say, well, I want to see that today. That's great. It's a good mood. But the fact is that we have a big, big palette.
Classically speaking, we look forward to the final opera of the 20th season. We're glad that's a ways off. Mozart's Magic Flute. It's going to be incredibly well sold, and I highly recommend people get tickets ASAP. Thank you so much, James Conlon, for being with us today on 20 Years with Maestro Conlon, a behind-the-curtain mini-series celebrating Maestro Conlon's 20th and final season as music director of LA Opera. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much, Gail.